Thanks, Jeff. I'd like to provide an introduction and an overview to the carrot and sweet corn market in Malaysia. And to this end, I'd like to work my way through the origins of this particular piece of research, this house study, who did the work, the sweet corn and carrot market in Malaysia, suggestions for R&D to further develop these markets, comments on successful exporting, and draw some conclusions. So the origins of this project, it's a sister project to the one that Erica just presented. Both projects arose out of some work in 2013, looking at taking the whole world and looking at opportunities for vegetable exporting. And it was a desk-based scoping study, and it worked through that process with some guys that knew about growing vegetables and some guys that knew about marketing vegetables. And it came up with a short list, and it provided some reminders in there. And the biggest reminder for this particular presentation is that of the total leviable exports, which are about 70 million a year for vegetables, carrots account for 50 million of those. So they're a very important export for AusVeg's portfolio. There's potential growth in that sector. It's a very well regarded product, and it's also very necessary to get in there and defend the market share that we've got from competitors with product of increasing quality. Sweet corn, as Erica mentioned, we thought there might be some opportunities to look at some of the value adding that's taking place domestically quite successfully for sweet corn and see if they are applicable in Asia and the Middle East. So this project didn't spring from nowhere. It came from some pretty considered research to start with. The task in this project was to do two things. The first was to do some market research, and we were going to do this with grower partners because we didn't think that anything we could produce would have any credibility with this audience or with anybody else unless we had the growers on tap there in the market when we're hearing what we're hearing. So we're in a position to do a bit of a sanity test on anything we heard and just see how far the eyebrows raise with a couple of fairly cluey growers. There was a lot of in-country research that we did 2 phases of in-country research, some scoping to start with, and then taking the growers back and actually working with the importers and distributors and the retailers and various types of retailers. The request was that we come up with some investment options for R&D. You guys haven't got a promotions levy, so we've concentrated on the R&D. There's some things that can be done in promotion that doesn't require an R&D, that doesn't require a promotions levy, and I'll talk about those a little bit later. The investment plan was subject to benefit cost analysis, and some benefit cost ratios were produced before the final recommendations were made. Who were the roosters that brought you this study? Mike Titley, who I think a fair share of the growers in the room would know. Vegetable production for export's his specialty. Crop scheduling for export, Mike's got a reputation in, as well as a lot of work on agronomy to improve shelf life, longer shelf life for export, and some work on post-harvest handling to get the best returns for the product that is exported. Some also might know John Baker. John's worked extensively in retail training in the hypermarkets and supermarkets and in the food service sector in Malaysia. Used to be the chair of the IAC for the vegetable industry. He was the boss out at Flemington Markets for a while. And he still does a lot of market support work for both Coles and Woolies. Myself, I'm not a vegetable specialist. I work generally in agriculture. Piece of work I'm proud of was some 2003 research we did for lamb markets right around the world, and developing strategy and analysing strategy for MLA that's proved to be, well, stood up over time and produced some reasonable successes for the lamb industry. I've also done some work on citrus export marketing and a lot of benefit cost analysis for the Horticulture Australia portfolio, probably across about 40 of the 43 industries. We teamed up for Malaysia with a fella called Eddie Shaw, who has a similar sort of skill set to John Baker, but he's based in Malaysia and works with the importers and the distributors. Does a lot of work for the US, and his client base is around the California table grape industry, US potatoes, Washington apples, and value adding and processing. He's one of his main clients is Green Giant. The team, and I think this is the most important bit, included a whole bunch of growers and the supply chain. We actually took the growers with us, as I mentioned before, to give that raised eyebrow test about cost of landed product and whether it was possible and whether there was a dollar in it for them at the end of the day. We worked with about 19, I think, of supply chain participants, mainly in that importer-distributor area. So in terms of carrot, what did we find? Limited domestic production, which is a very good start. We found that there is some production up in the Cameron Highlands. There's even a little bit of organic production up there. Malaysia imports about 70,000 tonnes per annum, valued at about $48 million per year. Now, I think this slide's kind of interesting because you can see from the slide that we're not the cheapest in the market, and as Austrade figures showed earlier, we're actually developing our market and growing our market. We're producing the Nance variety, or exporting the Nance variety, which is the mainstream of China's production as well. So we can hold our own there, and we think we can do some things to actually increase the volume of production. The USA provides sort of specialist niche for juicing, which is a pretty important segment too. So carrot market in Malaysia. Australia dominates the modern retail sector, the sector that's growing. It's about 30% of the trade at the moment. Looks like being 40% within the next couple of years. As Erica mentioned, it's the hypermarkets that are growing the most and provide the most opportunity. China dominates the traditional wet market retail area, where price is first, second and third in terms of considerations. The Chinese product's good and it's getting better. The Chinese are having problems with their cost of production, or outsourcing production to Vietnam, where labour's something like $20 a day rather than $40 a day in China. And the product quality and scale is very impressive. Australia's still a market leader in that sector that you really want, the hypermarket, the high value add area, the area that's growing. Some brief consumer insights. As Erica mentioned, these sort of products that we're looking at fit in with all the different ethnic categories in Malaysia. It's a multicultural community. It fits in with curries, and it fits in with cakes, and it fits in with juices. It's a product that the Malaysians are very familiar with. It's a everyday product. It's not a special occasion product. Carrots have a very strong association with good health, and it's a very health conscious population. Wealthy, middle class, health conscious, ageing population. Consumers prefer Australian carrots, which is really nice to hear. Superior quality in terms of taste, sweetness, uniformity in size, colour, nice bright colour. Food safety is important in the Malaysian market. I'll talk a little bit tomorrow about the UAE, where food safety is a whole lot less important, but it is very important in Malaysia. Strong association with Australian carrots with good health. Juice, fresh carrot juice is very popular and growing in popularity. The importers, distributors, retailers of juice we talked to said they believe the Australian product is actually superior, that it doesn't oxidise as quick, it isn't as high in fibre, and it's all-round better product for that particular market. In terms of consumer trends, organics is growing, but it's growing off a very low base, and Malaysia's got some capacity to supply itself. Coloured carrots, a bit of a novelty, very small sales only. Dutch bunching lines, again, it's a niche. You wouldn't build an export strategy around it. That's not to say that there might be some opportunities for individual growers. Australia dominates the pre-packed, bagged carrot market because they trust the quality of what we produce, which is a pretty nice space to be in. So what's needed for future success in the Malay carrot market? What will successful exporting be about? We think, after taking the growers to Malaysia and speaking with the supply chain ad nauseum, that there is significant growth opportunity in this market. Australia has an opportunity to target that modern hypermarket retail sector, and there are some opportunities in the Klang Valley and in KL for the better traditional markets. So don't dismiss the traditional markets by any manner of means. We need to keep differentiating on colour, taste, freshness, shelf life, food safety, bearing in mind that our competitors in China and now Vietnam are getting much better at that, and the quality of the produce they're delivering is closing the gap all the time. The growers that we travelled with were saying, well, there are some room for improvement in the product that's being delivered. Brush marks on the carrots, carrots that weren't completely uniform, some stuff that didn't look as fresh as it could have. So there's still further scope to lift our game and defend the market we have and continue to grow it. So the second part of our study looked at what the investment plan might look at for carrots in Malaysia. And we think there's scope to lift from current export volumes of 10 tonnes per annum to 20 tonnes within 5 years. And we're working off 2012 data, and I was pleased to see Austrade was saying that was already trending up. I think it was about 14 tonnes in 2013. The key needs to be, and this again is consistent with Erica, it's about growing the market, not growing the number of exporters. We're really mindful of the need not to introduce a whole lot more exporters into Malaysia and competing with other products or other suppliers of Australian carrots, but to grow the existing supply chains that have been developed. We thought there was some scope to do things over 5 strategies, the first of which is about positioning, work with the importers who have those networks, who have access to the better traditional markets and have access to some of the sort of second string hypermarkets and supermarkets. Definitely work with modern retail and get to those first string hypermarkets, the Tesco's, and work with the food service sector. And we thought there was particular opportunities in juice and juicing. Keep working on quality is the second bit. Maintain that preferred supplier status into the markets we want, the hypermarket, the premium end. In terms of product, it's going to remain a 20 kilo boxed product of small to medium Nance variety carrots. That's going to be the core of the business, although we do make some recommendations about doing some R&D on the capacity to supply composite grade carrot in bulk bins for the juicing sector. We think that's worth a little HAL project at the very least for a trial shipment. We think there's some opportunity to even out supply fluctuations. Western Australia is very capable of supplying all year round. Perhaps we're undersupplied in the amount of carrots we're producing at the current time, and perhaps there's some opportunities to look at some new production areas in WA and in some of the other states. And there may need to be some partnerships there to keep the volume of product up all the way through the year. Value adding, we thought the best bet for value adding was in the form of service, and it was interesting to hear Adrian talk about that this morning. It doesn't have to be packaging, it can be about regular and relevant information coming from suppliers, just communication, just keeping in touch with what's happening with the season and the volumes and the quality that's coming through. Training, we heard Adrian say that too, with love to take some of the know-how that's in the supply chain over here in Australia, and especially in retailing, and apply it to the situation in Malaysia, just to keep increasing the quality of what's available, and those category management skills and providing support in the supply chain. It's still a developing market in some ways. R&D focus, audited practices. Given that what we were shown by the growers when we had them in Malaysia about the product that's currently being supplied, there is some opportunities to audit practice and just see if we can raise a high bar a little bit higher in the future. Just on the production side, helping with the sustainability of Western Australia's production. It's Western Australia that's supplying most of the product into Malaysia. About developing break crops and getting rotations into the carrot production system, and some work with biofumigants there we thought was pretty important. As mentioned before, I think there's some opportunities to explore through an R&D project bulk composite grade carrots for that growing and high value fresh juice market, and maybe varieties. There's some work to look at, what are the seed companies doing with varieties. We grow Nance because that's what the two domestic supermarkets want to stock, but is it the best product for export growth? Is there some varieties out there that might be more suitable for both juicing and eating? So we get some dual purpose varieties that might really target export development. That's what we had to say on carrots in Malaysia. I'd just like to spend a moment on sweet corn, which was the other half of our study. The market is a bit different from carrots. There's ample, low-cost, high-quality product in Malaysia. There's a little bit of Australian value-added corn sold at Christmas time as a Christmas treat. The local product is very good quality. We went looking for niches that mightn't be there in terms of polka dot and pearl and baby corn and organic corn and so forth. And we heard unanimously from all the different bits of the supply chain is that local products really got it sewn up, and it would be very difficult for Australia to establish a meaningful beachhead in that space. So we concluded that Australian exports of sweet corn into Malaysia on any scale is probably not a viable proposition. An investment plan or putting more money into that particular market of your R&D funds is probably not a worthwhile thing to do. Story in the UAE is a completely different kettle of fish, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that tomorrow. So summing up, carrots Malaysia, positive growth potential. We probably need more supply, needs investment. There's a whole bunch of pretty boring benefit cost analysis in the project report that shows overall investing in that market with that product should get your return on investment somewhere around $5.40 for every levy dollar invested. Sweet corn supplied all year round locally. No value adding potential identified. Thanks, Jeff.